Greetings. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome back, everyone. It is the Starseed Ministry. It is, the 13th of February, 2023. Welcome back, everyone. A special shout out to the Starseed Fellowship and the people who are part of the Catalyst Classroom. I just dropped the third session of our Luna sessions this past weekend. It has taken me so much energy just to even coalesce my own thoughts about the information that I was gathering and presenting. So I just want to say a special thank you to all of you. And of course, if you are new here, welcome. Thank you for being here. A special hello to any synergists who have found their way here. You know who you are. So don't forget to breathe, my friends. Do not forget to breathe and to use your breath. It's so important. It's so important right now. So I have a reading as usual for the Starseed Ministry that I'm going to transmit to you today. Just a little check-in with the non-Schumann resonance that seems to be happening today. We'll just kind of go into that very, very briefly. Of course, there was a large X-class flare that was registered over the weekend. The KP index was hitting that level of geomagnetic storm all through the weekend and is starting to mellow out just a little bit according to the information we're being presented with. And the flaring seems right now to have tapered off just a little bit. There was a lot more happening on the other side of the weekend, and boy, was it ever a weekend. So today, our moon is in its third quarter phase, exactly square the sun, and it's in Scorpio. It's also will be in a square with Saturn, and actually in a T-square with Lilith, the lunar apogee, and Saturn. They are directly opposite each other. The true Lilith, not the average Lilith, but the actual oscillating lunar apogee is in an opposition to Saturn today, so we'll go over that. Of course, if you are part of the Starseed Fellowship Plus, then you have access to the weekly astrology. And I went over all of this in detail. Of course, I did talk about it on the Leo full moon report as well. And I do have Angus in here with me today. So he has been purring like crazy. So we'll see if he makes an appearance on the microphone. Sometimes he likes to do that. Right now, he's just kind of... Now he's just staring at the ring light, so I'm not... Okay, buddy. So I don't want to have to kick him out because he can be so rambunctious. Now, he's my rambunctious kitty, and his sister Malcolm is way more of the chill. Okay, yeah, he's just chilling out now. So I hope everyone's doing well as you can be doing right now. Oh, boy. The moon in Scorpio has been quite the doozy. So we'll go a little bit over the astrology of the weekend just to kind of bring ourselves back to what had been happening. I want to share an interesting story with you, and I really hesitate to go into the specifics of it because I am here on YouTube. But guess what? I'm going back to Odyssey. So if you are watching this on the replay in Odyssey and and in BitChute as well, that's a little bit... I know that BitChute has its own problems, but it's a little bit more free to comment. So if you feel called to comment about this story on those platforms, please don't do it on YouTube because my only goal here on YouTube is to reach as many people who have not quite gotten it yet and bring them into the fold as much as possible. But I do want to share a story, and then I'm going to give you an insight into what I'm offering right now in case anyone is interested. Everything that you see at the top here in terms of my promotional material is already on sale on my website, so you can go to the link in the description box, you can go to the bookings tab, and all of these are listed at the sale rate. I haven't gotten them fully put out on my email list or anything like that. But if these things speak to you, you can book for them through my website. So the story I want to share, so absolutely no interest whatsoever. in the Super Bowl, and I've never really had an interest. I know how to play football. I did grow up in a house where I learned how to play football. I do have like diehard Eagles fans in my family, so I'm sure they were completely consumed by the Super Bowl. I don't even know who won because that's how little I really care. There was a little bit of on social media, especially on Telegram, for instance, there was a little bit of like the halftime show and everything that's going on with that. So I really try not to get involved. But while we were eating dinner last night, Seth decided to put on the video of the Puppy Bowl, so we know about the Puppy Bowl. And I'm not trying to get into any of the imagery, the symbolism around it, none of those things. You know, we were just kind of watching it because we are animal people, and puppies are such a, you know, especially dogs, have been such a part of our life. And I don't know, sometimes it's really just therapeutic to watch little puppies run around. But of course, my brain, the first thing I was thinking as I'm watching this is going like, okay, what is like the underlying thing here? Like, what is going on here that besides like the blatant advertising in the background and who knows what else is going on? But I really was asking myself, all right, like what is really happening here with this? And the first thing I thought about is how we all kind of chip our pets, right? And that took me to a different mode of thinking about, steering people around, so to speak, energetically perhaps. And I was just like, I wonder how much of this is actually happening with these puppies. Like how much of this is like really organic and they're just running around playing. And it did look like that. But of course my brain went there, and I'm sitting there and I have this piping hot bowl of stew that I had made that I just had served to me, and I was holding it in my hand. And it's not that I'm not a clumsy person, because sometimes I can be, but this hasn't happened in a really long time, but it has happened before. And the reason, there's a really specific reason I want to bring this up, because I was thinking about this and I didn't say it out loud or anything. I was just thinking about like, what's going on here really? And as if someone had taken control of my body, I turned the bowl upside down and spilled this stew right on the front of me and burned myself. It was pretty... it was really painful. Thankfully, there isn't any, there's no super injury there, right? I immediately took off my clothes and put on fresh ones and put an ice pack right there and made sure to take care of myself. But boy, that was really, really interesting and very disconcerting, I have to admit. So, anyway, that's what I wanted to share about that. So we shall move on now, from that topic. But what I also want to, like I said, I want to share these things with you real quick before we get into the general meat, so to speak, of this transmission. The energetic tune-up I'm offering right now, which is a distance Reiki session and an intuitive reading along with it. And I'm offering that at a discount right now. I'm going to keep this up as long as it makes sense, because I think that this work is really, really important. So if you are feeling like you need an energetic tune-up, if you feel like you need Reiki healing right now, this is something that you can look into. So you just go to the website and you just book it. I'll get a hold of you, and as long as there's a valid email that I can reach you at, and we can book the session, and I'll check in with you directly. So the Starseed Synastry, some of you already know about that. Some of you have already gotten this. And so this is Synastry is the astrology of relationships. You look at the ways that you and another person's chart overlap, and we look at the specifically in this type of reading, we look at the Starseed markings and how they overlap and how it can give more insight into current relationship dynamics, perhaps some sort of karmic connection with each other. This has proven to be very helpful for people who have Starseed children or identified Starseed children, trying to understand how best to be in their lives. So if you have a child who fits into this and they are in fact under your guardianship and they are still a legal minor, that to me is implied consent. But everything else, if you want to get this reading, the other party must have consent. It must be informed consent. They must be the ones sending me their birth details, unless I have you have permission otherwise to do so. But this can be all manner of relationship, you and your parents, any interpersonal relationship that you want to get more information about. And we can also look at the composite chart, which is a way that you take both of the natal charts and it creates a third chart together. And that shows you, the astrological chart for your relationship itself. So there's a lot of different relationships that this can cover. This is also being offered at a sale rate. It's already on the website under the bookings tab, so you can find it. And the last thing I'm going to do, and I alluded to this last week, so the galactic oversoul or the draconic chart. So what this is if you haven't had this already, you don't know what a draconic chart is, don't worry and don't get freaked out by the word Draco. My gosh. The idea here is that it is the chart for the oversoul. And it really shows the unconscious drives that are motivating all of us as the underlying, or, if you oversoul, right? It is the layer that is underneath this particular personality, that the natal chart represents. And so the draconic chart is very simply cast when you move the north or ascending node of the moon in your chart. Move to 0 degrees Aries. This is for everyone. Everybody's draconic chart has 0 degrees Aries at their ascending lunar node, which means that their descending lunar node, or K2, or the south node, is at 0 degrees Libra. And when you move a chart in position so that you have that configuration, everything else moves around, and then you get the draconic chart. And so when I say galactic oversoul, of course, we're going to be looking at those starseed markings and getting an idea of what are the underlying energies, underlying influences that are often very unconscious and are the kind of like the baseline of you as a soul, with the natal chart then on top of it as this personality in this lifetime at the time, place you were born. Okay. So these are all available at a sale rate. Like I said, it's on my website. And so now that I got that stuff out of the way, let's get into the essence of today's broadcast. This is probably going to be one of the more serious broadcasts that I've done in a really long time. And it's not to say that it's negative. It's not doom and gloom. It is not meant to scare anybody, but it is time for people to wake up. Okay. And I was way more fired up this morning, and I've since taken a nice hot shower, taken, some extra time in prayer and meditation. I've been reading a lot more of my New Testament Bible, of course, and really finding guidance there. And so if that's something that it throws you off, you don't like it, it is something that you really push against, you may want to consider finding somewhere else to go, because I'm really just kind of done with placating a lot of people that still just don't get what's going on right now. So anyway, I was a lot more fired up, I'm not going to lie. So I've definitely taken it down a couple RPMs so that I can actually calmly give this transmission. But we're reaching a time, and we've all known this, right? For those of you who have been on my channel, for those of you who are part of the Starseed Fellowship, you know that this time of year has been on our radar for quite a long time, okay? And it's only going to get more pronounced and more intense as we get into the actual spring. We get to the equinox, we get to Easter, we get to Passover, we get to the eclipse on the 20th of April. The eclipse season starts. And Saturn is moving into Pisces. Pluto is moving into Aquarius, right? There are big transitions about to happen, and we can all feel it, okay? So I really am, I want to instill this as much as possible without getting people too, freaked out or necessarily pushing them away. But at this point, I'm just going to be transparent and put myself out there. And if that's something that you're just like, I don't like you talking about Jesus so much, then find somewhere else to go. But if you're a starseed and you're like deep down, you hear the resonance of my voice and you feel in your own body that it is in fact connected to the truth, then, and I'm not suggesting me as a personality, as D, right? I don't have all the answers. Believe me, the last 3 weeks have been a mind fuck, and I'm here for it, right? This is where we learn, and this is where we learn to discern based on the things that we're like, oh shit, I totally had that wrong, or I was following this course of information. And knowledge, this came right out of a verse that I opened it up, and it was completely random. And it was the first verse, and it says, knowledge puffs us up, right? We all have knowledge. And what is knowledge? It's the third house in astrology. It is the sign of Gemini, right? It is the time of year when the plant itself has come out of the seed. It has pushed its way up through the soil and is now exposed to the light of the sun. And it is the sun and the photons that the plant, through some sort of quantum mechanism, turns into actual food, okay? And that food that the plant creates through photons, right, through light from the sun, that food builds up the cellulose, the starch of the plant. And what does that create? It's the stalk, it's the stems, it's the leaves, it's all the vegetation of the plant. And what is that for? That eventually supports the plant flowering. It supports flowering in a very loose terms. It supports the plant flowering, which then leads to pollination, that then leads to the fruit growing. And what does the fruit do? The fruit holds the seed of the next cycle. It is the perpetuation of life, right? And so when we talk about knowledge, it's an important part of the process, right? The sun is, like I said, it's giving light. The plant, through a quantum mechanism, takes in those photons and literally uses that energy to break carbon dioxide and water down into food, okay? And then it grows. But everything about that knowledge is not there for itself. It is there to support the mechanism of life and procreation unfolding, okay? Just like knowledge for our own consciousness is not an end of itself, right? And who has gone sideways because of this? The Orions. So when we talk about knowledge puffs us up, it sure does. And there's an important part of this. But love is what teaches. Love, and literally it is what edifies. Love is what edifies. And this comes through Cancer in the fourth house, right? Because this is the connection to the world around us, our connection to our family, connection to our spouse, the container of those that we truly love and are committed to. It is connected to the experience of Scorpio, which we're going to talk about. This moon in Scorpio has been very intense, and the fact that we're about to hit this third quarter square in Scorpio is, the ideological crisis is very real. And all these third quarter moons, every month they represent that ideological crisis, that crisis in our own consciousness, right? Because we have to take the realization and the revelation of the full moon energy and make conscious choices now about how we're going to work with that energy, what we're going to do with it, how we are going to have a relationship with it, on how it represents our relationship to the people in our lives, to society, to God. All of those things are relationship, and the rhythm of the moon and the solely lunar cycle, as we're learning in the Catalyst Classroom, is a representation of that process within ourselves. Okay, so it's been pretty gnarly, and I'm going to share a couple of my personal experiences with the moon in Scorpio this weekend, and how it's really easy to ping off of the moon and to get into that space that is within us, that leads us into our fears, leads us into a state of powerlessness, exploitation, right? And how we can sink right into the abyss of our own self with a moon in Scorpio, and how important it is that we recognize what we are seeing down in the abyss. Now, the lift is coming. The moon in Sagittarius, right? We realize our strength when the moon comes into Sagittarius, our strength. And this is when I say the power is my own, I really want to clarify this and go back to that idea of knowledge puffs up, right? consciousness is something that grows our central nervous system, right? Our spine itself is the experience of sensory and perception, right? This is ours to have and to use in the world around us, right? But it's not ours in terms of we own it, right? It comes from ultimately our relationship to God or source or whatever, however you identify it. It's about that relationship. And this is why love edifies, love teaches. See, I could tell, I told you, I'm really fired up. I was really fired up way more this morning. So, what I want to show you, how convenient this is, actually. So let's get into it. How convenient is the fact that the Schumann has been blocked out now all day yesterday. It's currently blocked out, and you can't even get to the website right now at Tomsk University, the place where the Schumann is actually being measured and you get this graph from. You can't even get to that website right now. So it's been blocked out, and that seems so convenient with all of this UFO stuff happening, balloons and UFOs over all kinds of countries and people freaking out about it, right? And then you have the halftime show with Rihanna on a platform that is rising above it. I just think it's interesting that the Schumann is blocked out, and it seems a little bit too, convenient that we don't get a sense of what's happening in terms of the Earth's heartbeat and the resonance of the heartbeat of the planet right now, when we probably really could stand to have some understanding of it. But again, what do we do with this? We're going to have to tap in ourselves, right? We're going to have to tap in ourselves. What are we going to do when we don't have access to this graph anymore that's telling us what the Schumann is, when it's amplifying, what the quality is, right? All of those aspects of the Schumann that we are learning about. What are we going to do when it's not available to us, when we don't have access to it? Well, we're going to have to figure out, if you haven't already, how to tap into the Earth's heartbeat ourselves, right? And how to make that connection. Now, me personally, I have a whole practice that I have developed over many years to get to this point. And this has to do with tapping into the Earth star chakra, right? That is outside of our body. So whatever works for you is something you're going to have to develop if you haven't already. But again, I think it's very interesting that we have all of this quote unquote UFO activity going on, and then we can't see the Schumann. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. What do you guys think? I'm actually going to check in with the chat real quick and see how the stream is going. So, all right. Seems like everything, it says it's in excellent condition and good to go. All right, guys. So let's look. I want to bring up the, we're going to start going into this reading if you guys are into it. So first thing I'm going to do is I am going to, I want to show you last week's reading. Okay. And there's something else that I really want to clarify. When I use these tarot, which is the Thoth tarot, and I know that that's a loaded thing, right? Because it's Crowley's tarot deck, and he did not draw these images, right? There was another artist that created the imagery based on his conceptualization of all of these different symbols, okay? So that's something to keep in mind as well. When I use these, and many of you who've been with me for a while know this because I've explained this before, which is that when I use the tarot, it's only in one particular axis, which is the horizontal axis of the cause and effect relationship. What's happening in terms of out there, quote unquote, right? There's a reason I do that, because this is a measure. These symbols in the tarot represent what is being projected at us, or the external influences that are they're coming at us, influencing us. So I really want to make that distinction again so that people understand why I use this and that I'm not using it necessarily unconsciously. I do get a lot of value out of this particular deck. I've had it for a long time. I understand all of the mechanisms around the occult practices and the secret societies and all of that. And there's a reason that I use this particular deck in this particular axis of these readings, okay? And some of you who've been getting readings from me, especially recently, you've noticed that it's not involved when I work with people one-on-one. I don't use the tarot. I use the Akashic Tarot. I use the spirit animal messages. I use the Raven's Eye Oracle cards, right? So something to keep in mind as we go into this. Now, the other thing I want to point out is just take a moment to look at where it started, which was the 10 of Discs, the 9 of Swords, which was cruelty, Mars in Gemini, right, which is where Mars is right now, and then the Fool, right, the Fool, the Zero, the beginning and the end, right, the true innocence, the actual instinct that is ours and has always been ours, okay? I'm bringing this up because it's going to matter when we start looking at today's reading and as I give this transmission. So, without further ado, let's look at that. Today's reading. So, it started with the 10 of Discs, and this on the other side is also the 10 of Discs, right? And what is this? This is wealth, right? Mercury in Virgo. It's one of the co-rulers of Virgo, Chiron being the other one, at least in the way that I read it. So, and we're going to talk about Chiron as well, because we had a pretty significant connection between Mars in Gemini and Chiron in Aries. It's moved into the next degree. So, I want to talk about Chiron a little bit more as we go through this reading, because this is a very difficult reading. But what it does show us is that when we are rooted in a place of full awareness that we are attended to by God, that we are surrounded by angels or helpers or guidance, that we can access all of the resources that we have brought forward and that are still here. That's the other thing about this transmission and last week's reading. It started at this point, and it's about not only becoming aware of what your resources are, where your wealth really comes from, but you also want to be careful not to be hoarding it, right? This is another part of this card that's really important to consider, is that when you don't dispense of energy necessarily, it will find a way to dispense, right? It will find its path of least resistance. And that has to do with your physical, actual field, right? Your energy field. It also has to do with your resources and what you have to offer. So it's a reminder of everything that is culminated, and we've reached this point of completion. But if we hold on to it in a way that is greedy or it's never enough, it will still find its way of being dispensed, okay? But it also does show, when we go through this whole reading, that to bring us back to the wealth, our inner wealth that we have at our disposal at any point. So let's start at the beginning here. So we have this Ace of Swords, but it's also reversed, okay? So the Ace of Swords in and of itself, oops, I forgot to bring out my my notes, so just give me 1 second here. So the Ace of Swords in its reversal, I think it's important to recognize. So what are we talking about with the swords? There we go. We're talking about the realm of the mind, the realm of cognition, the realm of our nervous system. And so when we have it upright, there is this sense of the beginning of clarity, right? Clarity, realization. The ace is the beginning. It's the number one. Objectivity. So when it's reversed, there's some sort of intellectual debacle, right? Cruelty through logic. Where did we just see a card last week? Oh yeah, the Nine of Swords, cruelty, right? Intellectual dissatisfaction. I would venture to guess, based on my own experience and many people I've talked to, is that there has been a struggle with this realization, okay? And perhaps there has been an intellectual debacle. Perhaps there's a sense of coldness that has come along with this cold logic that is not like a crown on top of our head, but in fact is something that we're really struggling against, or we are having a dissatisfaction connection intellectually with what has come to our realization. So that's something to consider coming into the moment. And many of us have pre-waved this. And that's important to consider, that if you've been pre-waving this, it's because that this is coming out in a mass way. And had you not, there's the rattlesnake, had you not been able to pre-wave this, and I'm talking about weeks, months, and years, and you not pre-wave this and gone through these experiences, you don't really step into your role as a healer, which is what many of us are here to really be doing. Okay, so when we come into, here is our 8 of Cups, okay? Now, the word indolence means like apathy and laziness, okay? So this is such a difficult card. Number one, it represents Saturn in Pisces, which is where Saturn is going. And we've been talking about this for quite a while now. So when we have this card upright, there is something here to take us to somewhere, okay? It signifies a time of transition, which we just talked about. It signifies leaving an unhappy relationship, because we are talking about the realm of the cups, which is our emotions, our spirit, our feelings. But the thing is about this card, and this is like, the foot down of Saturn in the way that it just represents the sands of time that nobody gets out of. The delusion has lost all of its attraction, okay? And all that's left is frustration. So you start at this point where you are having an intellectual dissatisfaction, a cruelty through the logic, right? That you come to these conclusions and you're like, I don't like, or I am struggling, or I am dissatisfied with what I am coming to know, okay? And what is left emotionally is this frustration. Now, the thing about this card when it's upright is that it is a signal to start making up our minds and be honest with ourselves and open our eyes to upcoming change. Oh, time for your snack, Angus. Go ahead, buddy. Go on. Okay, so instead of waiting around for things to get better, right, trusting the plan, you have to take action. You must take action. And this is what this card represents. So many of us may feel tired, apathetic about issues that seem too big. I've talked to some people that are just like, this is too big, and this is a mind, like, this is messing with me, and this is too big. What can I do? Feeling trapped. I've heard that too. But this signifies a time of transition. And one of the things that stands out really strongly about this card is it's important to listen to your heart about your next course of action. Not what people are telling you, not what you have previously maybe believed about what's going on. You have to listen to your heart, because your heart is where your toroidal field is generated and will be the place where you get that intuition that tells you what to do next, all right? Or not even tells you what to do, but your next course of action. So you can say no. It's time to assess what you're capable of and say no to anything else that is less than your perfection. And your energy is the energy of God. Your energy is the same energy that we've all been endowed with as our birthright. And this is where I get the idea and the title of My Power is My Own. Not that you own it, but it is not for anyone else, any other human or otherwise, to use, to siphon, or take from you. But if you don't recognize that and take steps to do something about that, then it will continue to lead you to this place of like just being drained. I mean, look at this card. This is drained. I mean, there's very little water coming out of the cups, and they're all still standing. Okay, but they also represent a time of transition. It's time to get honest with ourselves and realize that we are responsible for ourselves in a way that maybe we didn't see, okay? And maybe there are things that you don't like hearing. Maybe there are realizations that you're like, this goes against everything I thought was true. And you're going to have to use that cognitive dissonance as a tool in order to continue to puff yourself up, continue to strengthen your own nervous system. and your spinal cord, your central nervous system. And what runs through your central nervous system? Oh, that's right, your cerebrospinal fluid, your sacrum up into your brain, right? It's a pump. And this is why there are lots of practices that lead us back to having a sense of autonomy and sovereignty around these things. Now, here we have ADSM. Right, number 22, I am here. Now again, here's this person expanding their knowledge base. They're reading. They have someone coming in, bringing them more information. That person's smiling, this person's smiling, but you see her eyes are going off and realizing, oh, there's this angel whispering in my ear. There are ancestors and guides who have gone through this that are silhouetted around me, okay? And there's light, right? You see this window, you see these little lights that are going on. This is looks like a little angel as well. It's kind of hard to see. Number 22. Now, this is the last card in the Akashic Tarot, like major arcana. Okay, ATSM. I am here. I attend to you. I have arrived. This is our energetic root. This is where we want to be drawing energy from, right? Drawing energy from the root and bringing it up, just like you're using the sacrum as a pump to draw, to pump the cerebrospinal fluid through your central nervous system. I am here. And this is a reminder as well that we are attended to. They've never left us. They're always here, but we have to be aware and we have to access this through our own means. And if we are, if you have your third eye and your crown chakra just open without any of this going on, I mean, you're just going to get sucked right up. And believe me, I have been through this. I've experienced this. I know other people who have experienced this. And the only thing that kept that from happening is tapping into my Reiki channel and opening it. And in that moment, it shut it down. But it's a crazy feeling. It really, really is. So this ADSM is really important to recognize that we draw it in. So, and that we are here for ourselves as well. So here comes the chess game, and I love the fact that the spoiled egg is here. Oh, that I was just like, yep. Oh boy, and we'll get into, we'll get deeper into that card as we look at the guidance surrounding this, right? So as much as the horizontal axis represented by the traditional tarot is like, these are the things happening and influencing us from the outside. The vertical axis is our spinal cord. It is where our energetic shielding comes from. And the heart is the centerpiece of it, right? And so this energetic axis is really important. Even if you are feeling in your heart, you're feeling that it's too big. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're feeling drained here. We have these tools that can help with that if we really tap into the fact that we are always attended to as long as we are aware and take the opportunity to tap into that. Now, the chess game. It's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Right? The three of keys. The chess game is the political and social conflict that is surrounding us. Okay? Most of the people involved are out for themselves. They're serving their own agendas. Deceit is present when you get this card, right? And if we're talking about what's coming in through the crown, for instance, or maybe we're just becoming aware truly in our consciousness how much of this is going on. So it's important to take an actual step back. You don't want to participate in the battles or the allegiances, or you don't want to allow yourself to be influenced by just having this wide open crown without any other mitigating factors, okay? And it's important. The deception is very real. And with all of this quote unquote UFO activity happening, you can bet that it's going to the next level, and to be aware that people are serving their own agendas, right? Are you just a pawn on this chessboard? Are you, rooting for one side or the other? I think that's something to really, really consider. And that's difficult when you've kind of put all of your energy into one side or the other, and realizing that they both sides are really just playing this match, and And then you wake up and you're like, oh shit, I'm on this board right now. I don't want to do that. Or I'm underneath and propping it up as well. So I think that a lot of us are starting to become very aware of this, to the next level, and just in the nick of time, right? Just in the nick of time. And becoming aware of this, right? Then we become aware of our wealth. Now, I want to make, I know that for people who study the Kabbalah, study the Tree of Life, keep in mind that the energy of the Kabbalah draws it down, okay? And what did I just say about how we draw up from the grid of the planet, the natural energy of the world around us, okay? So in many ways, this is inverted when you think about how it traditionally, through the Kabbalah and that type of occult practice, it is drawing it down into form. We don't have to do that. We're already here as human beings, right? So I just need to make that distinction. But in terms of the larger picture here of the 10 of discs and the wealth, right? Mercury in the third decan of Virgo. Wealth, security, contribution, visibility of our inner and outer wealth, and about sharing it, dispensing the energy. Right? If you are a healer, this is what your role is here to be, not giving your energy away, but dispensing what you have to give in order to help other people get to this place as well. And based on all of these factors, it's taking us right back to this place of realizing what our true wealth actually is. But it's coming from these experiences and influences that are really intellectually messing with us, or we don't like the conclusions that we may be coming to, and we may feel drained. We may not like it, right? And it's the energetic polarity, right? It's the axis, the vertical axis of our own spinal cord that is going to lead us back to a place of true wealth and inner wealth and security, okay? 10 of discs. So now, if you're struggling with ADSM, if you're like, I don't feel like this, like, how do I tap into this? Well, the cardinal is the signal that spiritual and physical stuff is out of balance, right? You are compartmentalizing these things into two places, right? Nope. Bring them into equilibrium with each other. There's no difference here. We are spiritual beings in this physical experience, and we're meant to have that be brought together, right? We don't need to compartmentalize them. And if we are compartmentalizing them, this is going to keep us from really tapping in to that sense that I am here, I am attended to, right? That I'm being guided, and that I'm surrounded by, guidance, my own intuition. So, and this is, I know people struggle with this, right? We have our lives, we have, jobs, we have careers, we have families, we have responsibilities that seem to take us away from finding this a space in order, to find prayer time, to find meditation, to practice whatever modalities of energy work or movement therapy make sense. But you have to find the place where these things come together for yourself, because otherwise you are not going to feel as if you are surrounded by love and guidance that you can tap into at any moment, right? You should be able to tap into it, and you can tap into it at any moment. You're actually not separated from it, but it's our belief that we are, and those things need to be, that these are two spheres of life, okay? Now, the thing that I really, this is real interesting. So this card is called the Doppelganger's Mirror. So I'm going to show it to you upright, and it's these oracle cards are meant for the imagery in and of themselves, right? So you can kind of see that this almost looks like, it's one of those Rorschach things, of course, but the idea here, it looks like a torso and the legs kind of spread. It looks like you can see the sacral area right here in the root chakra. The arms are spread out here. There's the solar plexus. You can kind of see the chakra system in some ways. There's no head. It's just the body, right? It's just the body, and it's called Doppelganger's Mirror. So in its reversal, though, which is where it is in this particular reading, And one thing I want to bring up too about the cardinal real quick before we move on from that is it's very easy to idealize your spirituality and separate it from your material existence as if those things can't be one and the same. And that's, again, the cardinal is about bringing these things back together where they belong. So when we see the doppelganger's mirror, now when it's reversed, which it is, and you may, let's see if we can actually get it into I'm going to see if I can bring it up here in its reversed, right? So you can see that it's turned over in some ways. And interesting that we would have the root and the sacral area now facing upwards in this reading. But what does it mean when it's reversed? It means you're becoming someone else. Distinct differences and originality, right? So maybe what this really represents is that you aren't just a reflection, or that you're not someone's doppelganger, that you're bringing your power back into your body and your physical material experience, okay? Otherwise, you are, getting uploaded perhaps into the metaverse when you have this upright, and this, when it's reversed like this, is a real strong indicator, at least to me, that when you're able to tap into that root and you are bringing the spiritual material back together as it's always been meant to be, that you actually come into your sovereign self. You are not just a reflection of something else. So that is a really strong one that came out as well. So, and I just want to make sure that we can get the whole spread here. There we go. Now, here comes the spoiled egg. That chess game, past its time, foul demeanor, and it's rotten. It's time to let go of this, guys. It really is. It's time to let go of the polarity of the white hats and the black hats. It's time to let go and walk away from this game entirely, because really our survival actually depends on it. And when I mean spoiled egg, yeah, it's well past its time. And what can you do? You can smell it. You can smell a spoiled egg. You can smell when something is rotting. And I would say that this chess game, well past its due, and to be and be able to sniff it out, right? Be able to sniff it out, and not get caught up in all of the deceit and the political agenda of the ways that they're like, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. And you know what I'm talking about. I don't need to necessarily go into it. Now, this is where we see, without these experiences, though, to not be so hard on ourselves, right? I mean, it's really easy to be like, oh, I can't even trust my own intuition because I, was so wrong about this, right? How come I didn't see it? How come I didn't notice that this was a rotten egg to begin with, or whatever? It's very easy to kind of get into that shame and guilt thing, okay? Don't get caught up in that. Realize how much of this has been experiences that are initiating into our purpose as a healer, right? And the rattlesnake, this is a great segue into what I want to talk about astrologically, because there's so much negativity that is attributed to serpent energy in and of itself, okay? And it's in Kundalini yoga, for instance, one of the most infiltrated and exploited types of energy work practices that there is, it is a coiled serpent that moves up the spine, right? And this is not unknown. And of course, it's been hidden from everyone in terms of their own capacity and their birthright. This is our birthright. This is not something that we have to earn. This is not something that is purely in the woo. This is part of who we are as human beings, okay? So when we talk about the snake and the healing potential of this energy, right? The Kundalini energy, the cerebral spinal fluid moving through our central nervous system. This is a reminder, that if we had not gone through some of these experiences that many of us have gone through, and whether or not they were initiated, who initiated them, why it's happening, now we know. and we can become more sensitive to this energy and this capacity that has always been with us and is our birthright. And so instead of, feeling sorry for ourselves or really still stuck in that intellectual dissatisfaction, we realize that we are becoming so much more in tune now with who we are and our own potential for healing and our own power. Okay. So this is really important to keep in mind. That spoiled egg, that just got me totally. So like I said, this is a great segue into what I want to talk about astrologically. And there will be the Starseed Fellowship Plus will get there. That you're going to get there, weekly on Wednesday, as they usually do. And if that's something that interests you, you can get more information in the description box, right? About what that means and how to be part of that. But let's see here. Where is our window? There we go, guys. So today's astrology. Now, let's just back up a little bit. Just to kind of recap the weekend, just a little bit here. One of the big things that is still very much in play, as you can see, is there, you see this blue line. This is called a sextile. This is a 60-degree angle. This is a harmonious, activating type of transit between Mars in Gemini and Chiron. Now, Chiron is the wounded healer. It's so generic. It's really the Christ principle or the astrological symbol of Christ, because Chiron came into form, fully formed in his human, when I say human, not really human, but in anthropomorphic form. But the back end of him was the horse, right? So the centaur, as we are led to believe and what has been explained to us, the centaur in and of itself is half, the top half is human and the bottom half is animal or horse. Chiron was an outcast in both ends because Chiron was a fully anthropomorphic body but had the tail or the ass end of an animal. So the material form or the human animalistic form is connected to a fully formed consciousness or, like I said, anthropomorphic being. Okay, so he was an outcast on both sides, and he was pushed, he was disowned by his own mother, who was a nymph or an immortal being. The father was Cronus, who was already eating his children, and Saturn, right? Saturn is that relationship there. Now, Chiron as an asteroid, as many of you know, has this eccentric orbit between Saturn, right, and Uranus or Uranus, which is the, basically the quantum leap into higher consciousness, okay? Now, what did Chiron do? He was a master healer. He was a master at astrology. He was a teacher, and he was able to assist and guide and teach and heal at a level that nobody else really could. He was the one who trained Asclepius, the serpent bearer, right? The one who was able to raise people from the dead using herbs and natural medicine, who had to be put, who had to be taken out of the picture because just can't have that, can we? Chiron was the one that trained Asclepius, okay? So Chiron did all of these things, and it's like a superpower. But that superpower came from the woundedness of coming into form and to have this back end of materialism, right? And so he did what he could while he had access to this energy and this ability, right? This direct ability to do these things. And who was he trained by? He was trained by Apollo, which is connected to the god of the sun, but really the god of divination, the god of divine justice and judgment, right? This is what Apollo represents truly. So, and the god in Greek mythology, the sun god is Helios, but Apollo is representing the energy of the sun and its illumination, divine justice, all of these things. So he's the one that trained Chiron. Now, Chiron suffering came from his inability to heal himself with his own energy. And what did he do? He basically gave himself up. He took the place of Prometheus, who brought fire to humanity and was being punished for that eternally. He took his place with his mortality so that he could actually heal and be released from his own suffering, because he couldn't actually heal. He could heal everybody else, but he couldn't heal himself. And so when he was wounded by an arrow that was poisoned, and he was in an incredible amount of pain, he had to let go of the very thing that made him so, that allowed him to heal all of the people that came into his sphere. And he let himself go. He embraced his imperfection. He embraced his humanity, his materialism. He embraced it fully, and this is what allowed him to be released from his own suffering. So Chiron has now moved into a degree of Aries that represents the coiled serpent. Okay? And in a sextile to Mars, which is in a degree about telepathy, which is a natural human thing, right? You don't need to, there's nothing that needs to mitigate this or enhance it. And it's not a purely psychic or spiritual thing. Telepathy is a natural human ability that we all actually have. And so Mars, being the initiation, and initiatory, action-oriented energy is acting in accordance to this. This communication is being acted on, or we are actively participating in some way through Mars, right? And if Mars is activated by the divine spark, right? By the spark of life itself, then we are naturally connecting to this. And the connection to Chiron in a sextile is making the connection that when we tap into our cerebral spinal fluid, we tap into our natural Kundalini energy at the seat of our creative power in that sacrum, that energy that is coiled and ready to go. We can actually do incredible healing, right through just peer to peer. Literally, between us and other people, right? And it doesn't take anything else around it to do that. Now, and this is still very active right now. Now, over the weekend, there was a yod, right? And what's the yod? That is the two sextile points each come to a singular point of quincunx on either side. And that was in Scorpio, right? And so as we are tunneling down, and as we were tunneling down, trying to make deeper connections, go deeper into the abyss, go further down into our shadow, go further down into the energy that is created through our connection with each other, it really made it much more difficult to have this harmonious connection with Chiron and Mars, okay? And that was a big part of the energy of this weekend because, like I said, it's so easy to ping off of especially the moon in Scorpio. It's very... It can get so deep into our own swamp that it is so hard to pull ourselves out with the moon in Scorpio. And I'll tell you what, the nightmares were really strong over the weekend as the moon was going through Scorpio, and really taking advantage, I think, of those dark spaces within ourselves to really have that energy be siphoned away rather than us utilizing it as a healing mechanism to see that, oh, these are my fears and they're being exploited right now, instead of oh gosh, I got to keep doing more and more shadow work, right? I mean, there's a time and place for these things, but if you go too deep into the abyss, right? Isn't that what Nietzsche said? It stares back at you. And the moon in Scorpio has just been ruthless with that this weekend. So please, as it is now coming into its square with the sun, realize, like, just because we have looked down into the depths of our own, into the depths of our own abyss, right? Are we going to be able to transmute that energy? Right? The sun in Aquarius, are we going to be able to transmute that energy and address what we are seeing with this X-ray vision through our own internal landscape, which is what the moon is? Are we going to how are we going to actually approach this ideological crisis as it comes into our awareness? Because that's what's going on right now and throughout the rest of the lunar cycle, right? We're still in our disseminating moon. It comes into a third quarter moon, and then we'll get to the balsamic phase. And luckily, like I said, the moon's going to come into Sag and we're going to feel the lift, but it will require that we tap into what our actual strength is and not get pulled into someone else's agenda of what belief and dogma are crystallizing and solidifying a belief system, right? That's going to be really important, because if we don't do that, then we're going to be eating that spoiled rotten egg or whatever, or we just won't notice that the egg is rotten because we are just being so pulled into that solidified belief system, which is never meant to be solidified, right? Ninth house in Sagittarius is the catalyzing fire. It is meant to alchemize our power into something precious. But if we are caught in dogma, belief systems, if we don't allow our paradigm and our purpose to have a sense of expansion here, then we're in big trouble, okay? And this is where this third quarter moon, as difficult as it is so essential right now to take seriously. Now, like I said, the moon's going to also come into this square with Saturn, and this is a difficult transit. This is bitterness, this is loneliness, all of those things that were the heart of the matter with the 8 of Cups, right? Saturn in Pisces, just having the connection with the moon in Scorpio in a square to Saturn is going to be a very difficult moment. And remember, the rattlesnake is showing us that the foundation of compassion comes from an awareness of suffering, and that real healing comes from what? The heart. This is why Reiki comes from your heart chakra, okay? You're not pulling in any entities, you're not opening any portals, you're not coming in and manipulating anybody's energy, okay? You are becoming a vessel for that energy in your cerebral spinal fluid and your spine to come into your heart chakra, and it comes right out through your heart chakra, right through the chakras in your hands, okay? And this is how Reiki is meant to work, and this is what the rattlesnake really refers to. Real healing comes from the heart, and you're not even healing another person, right? And this is what Jesus taught, is that he wasn't healing. It was people healing themselves because they believed that they could. And it was just his presence and the fact that his field was so resonant that it modulated other people's fields, and they believed that they could, and so they did, right? But this square with the moon and Saturn, it's very, especially a moon in Scorpio, it can be such a bitter transit. And then you have Lilith opposite of that, which is like, oh my, like so much on the heart right now, like almost overwhelmed. This is so important that we get our focus, in our vision focused, right? Otherwise, Lilith is going to lead us to just being so overwhelmed that we can't do that. And when we have a T-square, what do we actually want to look at? The ghost point, which is what? It's just going to be 28 degrees of Taurus, right? So this is the Pleiades. This is very close to the star Algol, right? Which is probably like one of the most feared fixed stars in astrology. But it's the idea that after the Sabian symbol is a woman past her change of life finds new love. It's the idea that the cycle turns over naturally and one part of your existence or one part of your life has ended, but that doesn't mean that there isn't more there. And the focus has to be here. And remember that the moon is exalted in Taurus. It wants to be over here. It is not. It is in its fall position in Scorpio, which is why it's so difficult when we have moon in Scorpio. And for people who have moon in Scorpio, we know all about this, and it can be so brooding and so dark and so intense. So it's important to, check back into those natural harmonics and know that that's the point that kind of evens out this T-square, even though we're so focused emotionally on all of the darkness and the deepness, and then it squares Saturn, and it's just like, oh God, like I'm so lonely and isolated, and I don't think I can actually do this. And if you have people around you that are getting into this space, like this is the perfect opportunity to offer what you do have, right? That wealth that you do have, reminding them that they have it too, that they always have it, that it's never gone from them, but they have to believe that they can and not get sunk into their own darkness, because that is definitely one way to really take advantage and exploit people. And that's happening. We know it's happening. So really intense times, my friends. There's no getting around it. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Yeah, you know what to do. You know what to do. You can go to my website if you're interested in any of the services I have to offer. You can check out what the Starseed Fellowship has in store for you if that's something that you want to invest in. For those of you who are part of the Catalyst Classroom, we're going to do our last live Q&A this week on Zoom, so just keep an eye out for the poll that will help us schedule that. And of course, your astrology for the week is going to be coming out. We're coming up on our last quarter, so we're going to have a new moon in Pisces on the 20th, and that means Pisces and Virgo, your lunar transit forecast sale will be available to you very soon. Just keep an eye out for that. You can always get on my email list if you want to check in that way and you're not into social media at all, but it will be on social media. I will let you know. So thank you everyone so much. Truly appreciate each and every one of you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other the best you can. I love you, and I will see you next week. Bye.